days a week for all sorts of purposes, and I felt at home there. At age 3, I felt comfortable to slip away from the family and the rest of the people gathered for the supper, and I went upstairs and found the choir podium where my dad stood every Sunday and directed the choir. My sister Nancy was supposed to be watching me, but she was a teenager and I was only 3 years old, and she had other concerns, I'm sure. I was found eventually, and there I was, standing there directing an invisible choir, singing to the top of my lungs. And as a gentle parent, my father instructed me in a kind and caring voice that even in church it was a good idea to let my parents know where I was going. Growing up in that family, as comfortable as I was in the church at an early age, I still couldn't help but wonder if someday my mother would take me to church and turn me over to the pastor.
Oh.
It's kind of an exciting idea. Samuel certainly got to talk to God one-on-one. But imagine sleeping in the church, listening even to the sleep of the old priest, and then being awakened by God himself. But I started being mothered in the church at an early age. I visited that church back in my 30s with a small child of my own, and there were people that came up to me and hugged me, and they told my daughter embarrassing stories about me when I was a child. How I would stand up in the pew and turn around and flirt with the little boy that sat behind us, and how I was always going to have a stick of gum from my grandmother to try to be quiet and sit down. But back to Hannah and Samuel. Women had so little status back then. Being a wife helped, but it also helped being a wife and a mother of sons. Now, Hannah's husband, contrary to the times, didn't care whether she provided him children. He had another wife that did that. He loved Hannah so much that he gave her special gifts and encouraged her every time he got a chance that she didn't have to be a mother to give him, to show her love and faithfulness to him. But then she went to the temple, and you heard of the story where she broke down there in the temple to the point that Eli thought she was drunk. She turned around, and when that child was weaned, took him to the temple and turned him over to Eli. And Samuel grew up to be a strong force in the early Jewish church, tabernacle. Now, who gave you the information, the belief, the promise, maybe even a passion that comes with faith in the Lord? Who was that? Have you thanked that person or prayed to thank God for placing that person in your life? Ponder on that in your heart. The next story I'd like for us to look at is the story of Moses. Marianne?
A man from the family of Levi married a Levite. The woman became pregnant and had a son. She saw there was something special about him and hid him for 3 months. When she couldn't hide him any longer, she got a little basket boat made of papyrus, waterproofed it with tar and pitch, and placed the child in it. Then she set it afloat in the reeds at the edge of the Nile. The baby's older sister found herself a vantage point a little way off and watched to see what would happen to him. Pharaoh's daughter came down to the Nile to bathe. Her maiden strolled along the bank. She saw the basket, the little boat floating in the reeds, and sent her maid to get it. She opened it and saw the child, a baby, crying. Her heart went out to him. She said, "This must be one of the Hebrew babies." Then his older sister was before her. "Do you want me to go and get a nursing mother from the Hebrews so she can nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter said, "Yes, go." The girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter told her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me. I'll pay you." The woman took the child and nursed him. After the child was weaned, she presented him to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her son. She named him Moses, which means pulled out, because she said, "I pulled him out of the water."
The important parts of this story as a mother for me were that, well, first to back up just before the story, the Pharaoh had decreed to all the midwives, the Israeli midwives, that they would kill any boy baby that was born. That was it. Black and white, just kill all the sons. Now the midwives couldn't abide by that. And what happened is what happened to Moses' mother. She hid her baby for 3 months until she just felt that the danger was too great. Now I haven't found a biblical reference for this, but she is traditionally referred to as Jochobed. And we'll sing a hymn later that refers to her as Jochobed. She devised a rather ingenious plan. She put the baby in a basket that she had lined with pitch so it would float, and went down to the Nile River and put him in the river nearby where she knew the princess came to bathe every day. And then, not to make things look too suspicious, she sent her daughter to watch the baby from a secluded area where she couldn't be seen. And when the princess came down, she saw the baby, sent a maid to get the baby out of the water because heavens, it might have been mucky over there, and she didn't want to get her own self mucked. So the baby was brought back to her, and she fell in love with that baby. And there was Moses' sister to say, "Oh, I can get a nurse for that baby, and she'll take care of it for you." And went and got her mother. Now, here was a mother that was in fear for her son's life, and she found a way to keep her son safe and to actually get to care for him through his childhood. Think if she'd been in charge of an army or a nation, what she could have done. It's just amazing. And of course we know Moses grew up under the princess's parenthood. She adopted him, and he became a power in the Pharaoh's army, in the Pharaoh's kingdom. His mother was courageous and intelligent, and I'm not going to say scheming. She thought out a plan, and it worked. There's one other story I want to share with you, and I think it's one that we don't hear about a great deal, and that's in 1 Kings 17:5-15, the story of Elijah and the widow and her son at Zaraphath. Judy?
Elijah obeyed God's orders. He went and camped in the Kerith Canyon on the other side of the Jordan, and sure enough, ravens brought him his meals, both breakfast and supper, and he drank from the brook. Eventually the brook dried up because of the drought. Then God said to him, "Get up and go to Zaraphath in Sidon and live there. I've instructed a woman who lives there, a widow, to feed you." He got up and went to Zaraphath. As he came to the entrance of the village, he met a woman, a widow, gathering firewood. "Please, would you bring me a little water in a jug? I need a drink." As she went to get it, he called her, "And while you're at it, would you bring me something to eat?" She said, "I swear, as surely as God lives, I don't have as much as a biscuit. I have a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a bottle. You found me scratching to get just enough firewood to make a last meal for my son and me. After we eat it, we'll die." Elijah said to her, "Don't worry about a thing. Go ahead and do what you've said. But first, make a small biscuit for me and bring it back here. Then go ahead and make a meal of what's left for you and your son. This is the word of the God of Israel. The jar of flour will not run out, and the bottle of oil will not become empty before God sends rain on the land and ends the drought. And she went right off and did it, just as Elijah asked. And it turned out, as he said, daily food for her and her family. The jar of meal didn't run out, and the bottle of oil didn't become empty. God's promise fulfilled to the letter, exactly as Elijah had delivered it.
I like this story an awful lot. And the more that you read it, the more that it occurs to me there's a parallel. Think of the jar and the bottle as our communion elements, the wine and the bread. And that may not seem to make a connection just yet, but first of all, the widow sees this strange man while she's out gathering firewood, and he wants not just something to drink, but then he asks her to make a biscuit for him. Well, I don't cook that much anymore, and I'll tell you, if some strange man walked up to me and said, I'd like a drink, I might share a bottle of water with him, but if he asked me to go bake for him, he'd have to find another woman. But she does that, and the amazing thing is she has only enough food to feed herself and her son for one day. She's out there gathering firewood to cook their last supper. She's going to fix this last meal with the last little bits that she has in the house, and then they'll prepare to die. What a story. But she shares an example to a son that she doesn't expect is going to live in a few days. And she's rewarded. She's not looking for the reward. She's just doing what you should do, which is share what you have with those who need it. The story goes on just a little bit. And then the next few days, he's living with this widow and her son. And in the next few days, the son becomes sick. It takes a turn for the worse, and he stops breathing. And the man, or the woman, turns to Elijah and says, why did you ever show up here in the first place? A holy man, barging in, exposing my sins, eating everything I've got in the house, and then killing my son. And Elijah just says, hand me your son. And he takes the child, carries him up to the loft where he was staying, and lays the child on the bed. Then he prays. Oh God, why have you brought this terrible thing on this widow who has opened her home to me and to you? And why have you killed her son? And he stretches out beside the boy. He prays 3 times. God, my God, put breath back into this boy's body. Just when you think nothing's going to happen, God listens to Elijah's prayer and puts the breath back into the boy's body. The boy sits up alive and well. Elijah picks up the boy, carries him downstairs in the loft, and gives him back to his mother. Here's your son, says Elijah, alive. And the woman says, I see it all now. You are a holy man. When you speak, God speaks a true word. And Elijah has won another convert to the God of Israel. He prays 3 times. We're just coming off of Easter. Christ was in the grave for 3 days, and then he was restored to life, and this boy is resurrected too. The jar and the bottle are overflowing. They're never empty. And communion sits there for us, always, as a symbol of what God has for us, in generosity and overabundance. And so we learn from the biblical stories of mothers and in the Bible, and mothering influences, and we learn traits to follow, to have the opportunity and to make a good go at being an influence on other people's lives. And these are just a small portion of the stories available on a walk through Scripture. There's the book of Ruth, with the story of Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz, providing a vital and mixed link in the ancestry of Jesus. There's Queen Esther, who risked her life to save her people, the Israelites, and the kingdom of her husband. There's Dorcas, and there's an unnamed heroine who refused to see the cross trampled underfoot at the pain of her own death. The list goes on. And what's common to all these heroines? Strong faith and devotion to God, the God of the Israelites, and the God we worship this morning. Courage and intelligence in the face of adversity is possible through their faith. And we may all share these traits. It's all possible through their faith and our faith, and through Christ who gives us, who strengthens us, and through all things are possible. And I thank you.